Good morning and welcome to the Point. It is my pleasure to have as a guest once again Gleaves Whitney. You are the head of the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies over at Grand Valley State University. Thanks for being back with us.
Thank you a lot, Rick.
The last time that we talked, if memory serves me correctly, we had both returned from Washington attending Ronald Reagan's funeral. The last time we talked on the air, we've talked a number of times since, and we talked about that remarkable episode, and I always introduce you as being from the Hauenstein Center, and it has been wandering around in my mind for some time that we ought to do a show that talks about what that center is and what it does. Some remarkable events, some great speakers who've come to town. In fact, this spring you just had this amazing thing. Tell us quickly about that, and then we'll go back and start at the beginning. But you had
That's right.
The Hitchens brothers.
That's right. On April 3rd of this year, we had the Hitchens brothers, Christopher and Peter, come in. Christopher Hitchens, the leftist who ironically supports President Bush in his war in Iraq. Peter Hitchens, the high Anglican Tory, who's against President Bush in the war in Iraq. Both of them are British by origin. Christopher in this country now, Peter still back in across the pond. And they went at it for 2 hours, and it was a fascinating debate. The result, though, is that so many people around the world were interested in that debate. I was really pleased. We posted the thing on YouTube. We were 8th in the world in the number of people watching a YouTube after that.
Anybody knows that YouTube, you have a lot of competition from a lot of things that are not too political and some that aren't too politically correct. However, to be number 8 in the world is pretty important, pretty impressive. But we'll talk a little bit more about some of these guests because you have brought some very interesting conversations to West Michigan and people far beyond this. But before we move on this particular subject, you gave me some statistics. How many students attended?
600 students.
Out of 1,400 people.
Out of 1,400 people attended that debate between the Hitchens brothers, and I was so glad to see those students really get engaged with this debate because they're debating Iraq and God.
And it is amazing when you think about it in this political year. And we're not going to talk too much about presidential politics this year. We may later in the fall have you come back. But I wanted to talk about this center, and let's just go back to the very beginning. It is called the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies, and I was looking at this book put forward by Grand Valley, the Grand Valley magazine, and it was talking about some of the collections of books you have. How did this begin? Not the books, but the center. How did the idea for this first come about?
Well, I tell you, Ralph Hauenstein is the man who was the founding benefactor of the Hauenstein Center. He's from Grand Rapids. He's 96 years old. He had a long and distinguished career as a businessman, as a diplomat, as somebody who served President Eisenhower. And before that, he was the chief of intelligence in World War II under General Eisenhower and was the man, really, one of the first Americans to go into liberated Paris in World War II, some of the Nazi concentration camps. First American to see with his own eyes. This is a man who's been around the block, been around the world. He was an observer at Vatican II, a tremendously aware person of all of the problems that our leaders face around the world, and also somebody who wants to give. And so he started meeting with Don Lubbers, then president of Grand Valley State University, and in 2001 they decided to set up the Hauenstein Center. This was before I came on the scene. So it was a tremendous start because Ralph had great hopes for this. They brought me aboard in 2003, July 2003. We got a fast start. We started having conferences right away, and we try to have about 30 programs a year in which we bring in world-class speakers from around the country, indeed from around the world, to address the key issues of our day.
I want to kind of put in perspective for people who may not know Mr. Hauenstein. One of the most vivid memories that I have of him, we were all sitting in one of the smaller dining rooms over at Grand Valley State University before an event, and he was sitting next to Henry Kissinger. And when Dr. Kissinger got up to address us all before a larger meeting, he spent most of his time talking about the war recollections between he and the colonel, as he referred to him, as they talked about their World War II experience, their shared experience. There are not a whole lot of people who can carry on that kind of a conversation with Henry Kissinger. That was pretty impressive.
It was impressive. In fact, Ralph Hauenstein knows so many individuals. I'm always impressed by the number of people that he stays in contact with, and I think that's been one of the secrets of his longevity. He has remained so involved. Here's something else about Ralph Hauenstein that very few people know. You know, a lot of founding benefactors will write a check and they'll say, good luck to your center. Ralph Hauenstein actually comes to all of our programs. He comes to our Leadership Academy programs. He will sit at a round table and discuss with students, and he'll debate them. He will offer observations reservations, so that when our students have a speaker, say Richard Norton Smith, Ralph will actually come to the small seminar just for the students, and he'll pitch right in as well. It is a wonderful environment. We are really fortunate to have that kind of commitment from Ralph.
So that leads us into, what do you do? We know how you got started. You have this benefactor. You have this idea with the university. It's a great plan, but now what do you do, and how do you implement this, and who do you impact, and who comes to you for resources besides me?
Well, what we try to do is illuminate leadership by looking at the American presidency as a crucible of leadership, one of the toughest jobs in the world for leaders. We try to throw a light on that to tell us, what does that say about American history? What does it say about the challenges of leadership? What does it say about our responsibility as citizens, our civic literacy? Do we have enough to get through, for example, the election 2008? And I try to bring in speakers who are provocative and accomplished. Always somebody who has, if they have a strong argument and they've made that argument with integrity, they're welcome at my table. We don't have a political litmus test for the speakers who come. I strive for balance in the programs. For example, when you observed just a few minutes ago, we had both Hitchens brothers. It was to debate the Iraq War. So I have these voices come in, and the students are one of our target audiences here in Grand Rapids. But we do more than just try to reach out to students with our Leadership Academy and programs. We also try to reach out to the Midwest and to West Michigan with a speaker series that really does attract some of the most interesting, compelling voices right now that are controlling public discourse. If you think of a Richard Norton Smith or an H.W. Brands, who's come so close to winning the Pulitzer Prize, he's won scads of other prizes, and we actually have those people come in as scholars and residents, and they stay with us, so that audiences that'll drive in from Nebraska and from Ontario and from Ohio, they come in, they stay a few days, they actually get to know the scholar. They can meet with him, they'll go out to lunch with him, and they'll have this one-on-one discourse. The things that I hear again and again by offering those programs are really encouraging, because people are hungry for the knowledge. They want that deeper understanding of what's going on. When you just read the newspaper headlines, sometimes you really can't divine what's happening. A third way we try to reach out, besides the Leadership Academy for the students and our programs for people throughout the Midwest, is we have a website, www.allpresidents.org. Through that website, we really try to reach a national and indeed an international audience by having essays from some of these world-class people presented for anybody who wants to learn more about the presidency or leadership or American history. And we have, of course, YouTubes of our videos of some of our exciting events, and so people worldwide literally can access our programs. Just a little note, I was interested in that Hitchens v. Hitchens debate to see where people were looking at that YouTube video. We had people on every continent but Antarctica accessing it. We were number 5, for example, in South Korea. Imagine that last